Hi, everybody. I am Julie Collins. I am the national organizer for Red, Wine, and Blue, and I am coming to you live from Washington, D.C. this week. I'm here for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's annual legislative conference. But I am very excited to have these ladies with me tonight. We are going to talk about what it's like to be Black and in the suburbs. And so I'm going to have them introduce themselves, and we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm just kind of going to go as I see you guys on my screen. So Candace, you're right next to me. If you would unmute yourself and introduce yourself to everyone.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Candace Hardnett. I am coming from Savannah, Georgia right now. I actually grew up in Virginia and in a suburb in Virginia. And so I live in a suburb in Georgia now. Yeah, glad to be here with all of you wonderful people tonight.
Adrienne?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me tonight. My name is Adrienne King, and I currently live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, in Percy, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Bucks County as well. My family moved to Bucks County, I think, when I was in first grade. And so I went to first through 12th grade in Bucks County as well, in a different city, different town in Bucks County, but still in Bucks County. Left and went to college in Pittsburgh and decided to come back to Bucks County. And eventually my husband and I decided to settle here and raise our family, our two girls here as well. So thank you for having me. I look forward to the conversation.
Tara?
Yes, I'm Tara Seward. Thank you for having me back. I think this important conversation is something that we could probably have many times over. So appreciate everyone listening in and really being empathetic too as we're starting to share. So I'm Tara Seward. I live in Dublin, Ohio, which is a suburb outside of Columbus. Born and raised in Dublin, actually. And I have four children, 3 boys, and my youngest is a girl. So he's actually at Boston University. I have a junior, and then I have 2 in middle school. So we're doing the school board thing here right now. I just actually got back from canvassing. Definitely a lot going on right now. We got a lot going on in November, and excited to be involved.
And Ray?
Hi, everyone. I'm probably not a stranger to you. You've probably seen me on some of our other national programs or our band book club, but my name is Ray Ingram and I reside in Jacksonville, Florida. I grew up in the suburbs of Memphis and also on several military installations around the world. My husband and I moved to Jacksonville after living in Key West, Florida for a few years, and I'm raising a toddler here that goes to a private daycare that's next to a really great public school. And so I'm really excited that we're continuing this conversation because I think it's so important to underscore the importance that the suburbs are not white and that there are Black folks and other folks of color in these spaces. And I'm excited to have this conversation today. So thanks so much for leading this, Julie Collins.
All right. And I live in Newark, Ohio, which is just outside of Columbus, Ohio. But again, like I said, I'm in DC right now for this conference. But we're going to go ahead and get started. One of the things I do want to say to you, though, is as we are talking, if you have a question that comes up, please feel free to put it in the chat, and Julie's going to capture those and ask us the questions at the end. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So tonight we're going to talk a lot about allyship. Because it's something that we hear, it's a term that we hear in the news. It's a term that we talk about sometimes. So one of the things that I wanted to maybe talk about first is, what is your definition of an ally? And Tara, I will start with you. What is your definition of an ally?
For me, I think an ally is someone who is able to be an advocate for you. I know that there are times when it feels that I might not have a voice in that space, and a friend, a family member, there's a lot of different people, acquaintance, sometimes even strangers that you don't know are able to step up and advocate for you and be that voice when they know that sometimes you can't. And so I think that's really what it is to be an ally, is to be sometimes just to be a person who listens, a person who's able to advocate, a person who is able to really have your back in a situation. And I think we all need allies, and we all can be an ally for someone else in our marginalized communities. And I think I really advise, if you aren't an ally to someone and you've had an ally, you know how that feels, you know, inside in your heart, you know how that made you feel. So I encourage you to be that for others.
Candace, what about you?
And I apologize if I have some internet problems. Just let me know if I freeze. But for me, I've moved away from the terminology of ally as much as I want an accomplice. I look at it, and if someone is an ally, they can stand beside me, but they can also and align with me, but they can also unalign themselves. And so I want somebody that's an accomplice that is in it with me to the end, meaning that when it gets a little hot, when it gets a little heavy, when it gets a little hard, they're not retreating back to safety, but would rather stay here with me. And at times place themselves in front of me to catch the things that were intended for me, that that would harm me more than it would harm them. And so I believe that's where the definition, the terminology needs to move a little closer, to accomplice, as we're discussing these things, because it's almost like the same terminology we used back in the day of tolerance. We've gone beyond tolerance now. Now we want affirmation. And so same thing with allyship. We've gone beyond allyship. Now we want accomplices.
Adrian?
So I would agree with both what Tara said and what Candace said. I feel like it's the evolution of the term ally. And so what I'll just add to that is someone who is willing to make themselves uncomfortable for the sake of myself being more comfortable, right? That person, as you said, Candace, that's not afraid to put themselves out there. And even when they find themselves in the thick of things, they don't retreat, right? And also that person that doesn't necessarily speak for me, but they speak for themselves, right? And then they can create a space for me to be able to speak. And also that person that checks in, right? And really says, what is it that you need me to do, right? And doesn't necessarily step out there on their own, because what they do may or may not be what I need at that time, right? So it's that person that's willing to take the journey, right? It's that person that's willing to, a lot of people sort of aren't in this space because they're afraid to be wrong. They're afraid to say the wrong thing. They're afraid to do the wrong thing. But that person that can actually just push through that for a minute, right, to get that level of understanding and connection. That's what I see as an ally and an advocate. The action part is very, very important to me. I always say that allyship is a verb. It is not something where it's just words, words, words. It's words for the sake of determining how you're going to move forward in action, right? Because without the action piece, then the rest of it really doesn't matter. And I also feel that even in regards to myself being an ally, I don't feel that I can give myself that term. I feel like it's the person that I am seeking to be an ally for that can say, yes, you are my ally.
Ray, what about you?
I can concur with everything that Candace, Adrian, and Tara have already stated. And I'd say that going back to the accomplice piece that Candace spoke to, I'm even looking for co-conspirators. I want folks to let's figure out how to create solutions and spaces before someone even needs to show up as an ally, and making sure that we have safe spaces, so that we're conspiring to have safe spaces, regardless if we're trudging through patriarchal waters or white supremacist water or capitalistic or imperialistic waters. Like, we want to make sure that we do that front end proactive care as opposed to reactive allyship, because oftentimes, and when I've experienced allyship or accomplishship or even co-conspiratorship, it always happens like in the moment. Let's plan for that front end before we get in uncomfortable situations. And so I concur with everything that everyone else has shared on the call so far.
You know, the only thing that I think that I would add, I think back to, you know, in our history when we had allies like in the 60s and folks who stood up and literally put their lives on the line. You know, I think that I heard somebody speak one time and say, if you are not willing to stand and get a, you know, a punch for me, then you are not truly, you know, an ally. And that's extreme. But in some instances, I mean, it really is almost like that. Because, you know, a lot of times folks are in spaces that we don't even have access to. And things are said and things are done. And what are you doing when that kind of thing happens? You know, so that's another, you know, thing to kind of maybe consider. So what do you wish women who want to be helpful, what do you wish that they knew? You know, what is it that you know, because this is something that, you know, that whether we call it accomplice or whatever term that we assign to it, you know, a lot of women don't even really kind of know where to begin, because this is really outside of anything that they have been around, anything that any kind of norm that they have had. So, you know, if we want folks to be our co-conspirators, I see a yay, yes to co-conspirators in the chat. If we really want that to happen, what do we wish that they knew? So, Candace, we'll start with you on this one.
You know, for me, I think it's important for any of us going into a space that is not you know, one that we're used to, that there are nuances to literally every space. My experience in Georgia is not going to be the same as any of the other women on this panel. And even if we were still in the same city or state, it still wouldn't be the same, because we're individuals and we have different dynamics. I failed to mention in the beginning that we're raising a daughter. We're an LGBTQ family. I have a wife who is you know, a woman, and so there are different dynamics within our families that cause us automatically to be different, but yet are still on the same, need the same things, or have the same alignment as far as our mindsets. I wish that people could see the African American community as less of a monolith, in other words, and more of a people, a group of people that share an oppression, right? But have individual stories and care enough to learn those individual stories on a very intimate level, versus simply just seeing a Black person, they must have this attribute, they must have grown up here and this way, and all of these things that are possibly true, possibly not, and that is okay to inquire and to ask. Once you have formed relationship with us, it is okay to have conversation with us the same way you would have conversation with anyone else, with respect, with mutual love, and in a heart of curiosity from a good place of understanding.
Adrienne?
I think what I would add to what Candace said is, I'll tell a little story. I had someone who called themselves an ally, but when we really got into a situation to sit down and have a conversation about it, the response was, I don't want to talk about this all the time. With my friends, we don't talk about this all the time. We come over, we have fun, we do this. We don't talk about this stuff all the time. And so I think what I would want is that level of understanding that when you're trying to be an ally for someone that needs that type of support, this may be your conversation all the time, right? And this, if you're an ally, then you are the safe space, right? Or brave space for that person to have that conversation, right? And so I think I would want them to know that, but I also would want them to know that what they're seeking to do for me as my ally benefits them just as much as it benefits me. Because sometimes allies come into the role and it's almost like a pity party. It's almost like, oh, let me help you, right? When the affirmative action ruling was made and that was rolled out, I had someone from work call and say, are there really going to be Black little children who, and I just, do you not realize that affirmative action not only benefited Black people, it benefited everyone, right? So I think it's that understanding that you're being an ally, yes, for a marginalized or underrepresented group historically, but the benefits of you doing that work is going to benefit so much further than that one relationship.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tara?
Yeah, no, I agree both with Candace and Adrian. I do want to tell a story if I can, because I think it would help explain what I feel that I need. And I think asking the question once you have that relationship, I think that is key to first establish trust, and really come authentic and genuine. And people feel that, that you can feel the intent of someone. So really the missteps then they're not coming on you as hard, because then you're able to take that as a teaching moment. So I just went to Canvas and I had an experience, probably it was with Vote No in August. And I went to a newer part of Dublin. It's a little bit more rural. Houses are being built out there. It's already primarily white here in Dublin, but specifically in that area, it's more rural and white. So my first door, I'm going up there. I'm excited. This is the first time I had gone out for Vote No. And the woman, I stopped on the driveway, and she was in the garage, and I just said, do you have time? First, just because I felt a little energy that wasn't necessarily welcoming. So I wanted to just ask that. And she said yes. And so I just kind of started from that place, asking about if she was aware there was the special election, all of those things. And immediately she said, I don't need to be educated by you. And I said, oh, excuse me. So let me go back and quickly say, I normally, when I go in my neighborhood, I don't wear election attire. I wear the school that I'm from, and that's intentional. To say I live here because I need people to know that, because I've had very bad experiences, especially with my boys, mainly from, I have different complected children. My darker complected kids have really gotten, go back to your neighborhood anytime they come and just knock on the door. And we're talking like four houses down, and the next, we just haven't seen them. And so I'm aware of that. And so I come with the school. I come with, I live here, so I didn't have that on. And I regretted it right away, but I was like, it'll be fine. And then that first house happened, and she said, get off my property. And I was like, oh no, I was just kind of talking. So I started kind of backing up, trying to get back to the sidewalk. And she said, I'm calling the sheriff. You're trespassing, yelling. And I was so taken aback, I think, because I considered myself very friendly, very warm. And I asked her, I said, I really don't understand why you're being so rude. I just don't understand it. And again, she hopped on the phone, pretended she was calling. I don't know if she really called or what, but she's saying, this woman won't get off. I was like, I'm on the sidewalk, and she just kept at it and was like looking at me. So I hopped in my car and I just started crying. And I called the person that was in charge of the turf. And then I called another person who was canvassing. And I called the person who was canvassing, and she said, "Where are you? I'm coming. I'm going to come there. I will finish it out with you if you want to keep going, but I just want to be there for you." And I was like, I didn't know I needed that until she said it, because also when I called the person who was in charge of the turf, and we called together, and she's like, "Let's call her." It was, I'm in the middle of doing houses. I'm busy. I'm trying to do this. Are you okay to continue? So those two different responses, can you still go on? Sometimes we'll mark it off. That wasn't what I needed. I needed someone to acknowledge where I was in that space. And she came there and we talked about it. And she said, she had a lot of words for the woman, a lot of color. But she understood that there was a part of that was race related. And I thought that was important, that I didn't have to say that. Mm-hmm. And she picked up on that. And I felt, it's going to make me cry. Yeah.
It's okay. It's all right. We have all been through this in one way or another. Might not have been canvassing, might have been, but we have all been through this.
So sorry. So I just, it's so important to recognize that, I think, in someone, and see that. And when you hear someone else say it, it's like, it's not just you, right? It's not, I'm not crazy. I didn't make this up. I didn't, and so when I tell people, this is why I have to wear this shirt, because I have to express that I live here. That's based in reality. Because that's, something that I have to experience, and that I make intentionally, I make sure that I don't take my children, my boys, especially my boys, to houses. My daughter, she's fair, so she can come with me. But it's a thought, it's a conscious thought that I have to make. And I really, when I'm saying what I need, is that, right? Is that someone to just be in that moment and feel that. And I felt that she put herself in that position, and she knew where that was coming from. And for her to come and be with me, I did continue on, and I canvassed, but I was going to go home. I was going to go home if she didn't come. And I think sorry, that was a very long story, and I appreciate you giving me time there. But that's really what I think is important. And, as we're, I move forward and canvas, I think people even taking the time to say, where are you comfortable? Where are you most comfortable? Because I'm most comfortable across that river where it's more diverse, and I'm most comfortable there. I just am. And if you just ask me, I'll tell you. So I think that's really what, for me, is what I need, is to be asked.
Ray, what about you?
Thanks so much for sharing your experience, Tara. And just want to hold a moment for you, because I'm just deeply moved by what you just shared. And so, as a part of it, I think there's something that allies or accomplices or co-conspirators don't know, is that as Black women, or even Black moms, we've had to develop a level of emotional intelligence or social emotional learning skills before I had the language for it. Since I remembered myself, I've always been keenly aware that I'm a Black woman in America. I grew up primarily in the South, though I was born abroad, and so I had some interesting experiences as a child. My mom is, her complexion's a little darker than mine, and her having a fair child was interesting in Germany. And so I've been dealing with this since the beginning of me understanding who I was, even before I remembered my name. And so I will say that is something that we're keenly aware of every time we're in a space, that we're a Black woman, and there's other intersections and identities we all hold to, but you have to be like, okay, where is the exit? Who is here? Am I safe? What do I do if this happens or that happens? And so you're always scanning spaces to know, like, how do I protect myself or show up or make sure that I don't express too much anger because it might be offensive to others in the space, regardless of their identity. And so I think that that's what I would want allies to know, is that I'm dealing with so many intersections and processing them so regularly in every space I go into. And for some of, I mean, I have a friend, I mean, she was like, I didn't even know I was white until like we started talking about it in middle school. And I'm like, oh, you didn't know you were white? I'm like, I've been knowing I was Black and born female my whole life. And so how you didn't know? Or I've had people say, well, I don't know if white supremacy exists. I'm like, I don't know how you don't know. Like, have you seen the policies of where we live? Have you seen what gentrification or redlining or even food deserts look like? And like the people who occupy those spaces and are so I would just challenge folks who want to be allies or who do identify as allies to understand that we've been processing this information about our identities our whole lives. And there comes a level of weathering that comes with it, which I'm not even gonna get into because we don't got time for that one today. But I think we need to really understand that we all have different intersectional identities, no matter if we're Black or white moms or moms of color. But I think that we've been processing it at such a high rate in every space we go into. I need our allies to understand that and understand, like, I'm always wondering if if somebody's gonna pull a stunt or not, and how am I gonna protect myself?
That we literally had that tonight, just in general. I was walking and I had on this jewelry. It's not even real, but it's very flashy and shiny. And I wasn't even thinking when we started walking to the grocery store in a town we don't live in, what I had on. And this person saw me, looked, and did a double take. And so when we walked into the store, I made my best friend take everything off of me and I put it down in my purse. And I said, we're going to walk a different way when we leave because I don't want him to think that he can attack me or whatever over, some $17 jewelry. Because he could quite frankly have it if it was that important to him, but I don't want to be hurt. But that's a different day's discussion. But what I wish that our allies, co-conspirators, or whatever knew is that when we bring up something, when we actually do bring it up because we feel comfortable enough to bring it up with you, believe it. I have a friend, and we've been friends for a very, very, very long time. And I think it was on one of our Zooms that she was on, and she said, all these years when you said things had happened or whatever, I just kind of thought you were exaggerating. And I wasn't exaggerating about any of it. I'm telling her the things that are in my experience and in my life because she's supposed to love me and, be someone who's very dear to me, and she still is. But I'm just, that really kind of took me aback a little bit. And so, I just wish that, we need to be believed when we say something, when we are confident enough to think that we could bring you into that level of intimacy with us, because it is a level of intimacy. Please don't mistake that, to tell you that, this happened and this is how we felt and this is what we thought in that moment, believe us. There is a prevailing, oh, they didn't really. And yes, they did, because they wouldn't have done it if they didn't really. So that would be the thing that I would wish, that women who want to be helpful and want to, really kind of do this work, would understand. Do you guys have somebody who's willing to speak up for you when you're not in the room? Do you have somebody in your life? I mean, you don't have to name names, but do you have somebody in your life right now who doesn't look like you, but if something went down in a room and you weren't actually there, would they be willing to speak up for you? So we'll start with Ray on this one. I haven't started with you yet.
Say Perhaps. I don't know. I'm not quite sure about that. I do believe that as we traverse throughout our lives, whether we're in the workplace or with our families or with our friends, I do want people to advocate for me or speak up for me or bring up opportunities for me when I'm not in that room. And I try to do that for others. I try to elevate the experiences and stories of folks, but I'm not quite sure about that. But I do have intimate relationships with folks I can consider to be co-conspirators, and have definitely seen them put themselves in harm's way in some instances to make sure that folks like me or that share similar identities to me are represented when we're not in those spaces. And so I think that it just depends on the situation. So perhaps I can't name a situation quite right now, but perhaps.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair enough. Adrian, what about you?
My answer might be similar, Ray. Like, I might have some that would, but I think the difference of having ones that would is the line of, would I have to worry about what you would say? So if you're speaking up on my behalf or for me, or because something came up that you feel like you have to defend me or what have you, the ones that I feel that I could just say, okay, they did it, are very far and few in between. There, if I were to hear that something like that happened, I'd want to know more, well, what did they say, right? To make sure that it truly represented me or the situation, right? So I would say the ones that I could, that there's some, but I'd have to sort of do that check to say, well, what did you say, right? Or what did happen, or what went down, right? To feel that comfort that, okay, yep, no, you took care of it, or you represent, or I didn't feel like I had to come behind you, right, to clean it up. Now I work in corporate America as well, and so that's the big thing, to have people that will speak for you when you're not in the room, right, whether it's for an opportunity or for something like that. And I remember when George Floyd's murder, after that happened, I was leading a meeting with some of our executives. And we do like a check-in. How are you doing? Scale of 1 to 5, right? And I'm always a person where I'm gonna start my day on a 5, and I'm really gonna resist letting anybody knock me off on this 5. But it was a hard day after that had happened. And so when I answered the question, I said I was a 2. And that shocked them because I'm always a 5. And so when I told them, what was happening, and that I can't sort of put the mask on today, it's really weighing heavy on me. And while they didn't understand, most of them said, oh, well, we know that's going on, but we're able to sort of put it to the side and keep going. And I said, well, I can't, because I look right out this door and I see my Black husband, I see my children, my family, I see people that look like me on the news that are rioting and doing all and getting hurt and all of that stuff. I can't tuck it to the side. And what I found out months later is that they took my pain to the boardroom and expressed that. And that was the signal for them to wake up and start to check in on their Black employees when things like this happened in the community, right? And so that was a situation where they were able to sort of take what I shared and share it in rooms that I was not in. And that then sort of helped others in the community to get the support and to get allyship, right? And to spark some of these conversations that had never happened in corporate America, because I was the one who had the voice at the table and I chose to use it for that purpose.
That's fantastic. Really is. Tara?
I had to think about it also to see if there was some people. I would say I do have a couple people I know that would speak up. And I always hesitate saying for me, because I don't think that they're speaking necessarily, or they shouldn't speak on my behalf. I think that they can speak from a place of their experience. Like you can't ever know my experience if you haven't lived it, right? So I appreciate when people understand that. And it's, hey, this is why that's bothering me if I'm not there. This is why that's bothering me, not because I've been that person, but I know, what's going on, and this is how it affects me. Because it affects other people too, right? It should affect other people in different ways, but you should be affected by something like that that's offensive to any marginalized community. It should affect you. And so I think when we talk about being that ally, being that co-conspirator, these are those places where that person, would need to show up. And it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to put yourself in that position. And that's where I believe, you're there in that space. Everyone's looking at you. It's a hard moment to stand up and say that on behalf of someone who's not there, right? In a place that isn't expecting it. So I think, yes, I can see that there's some people who do that. I mean, this is a huge group, right? I mean, I'm sure we have friends that are advocates, and I have those as well. And when I mentioned the conversation, like, both of those people are I would say huge advocates for our marginalized communities as a whole. But like I said, that experience was different. And so you can live it, you can say it, but when it comes down to it, and you need to show up, are you there? Can you do it? And that's really what it's about. And there's very few people that are able to do that if they have not had that lived experience. So that's why I hesitate saying that. But again, that person came to me and showed up, and that is the one person I'm thinking of right now that I know that would be willing to say, hey, that's not okay what you just said. That doesn't sit right with me. I'm not going to allow you to speak that way in my presence. And really just speak her truth, which is her truth, right? And not speak for me.
Candace, what about you?
I'm very appreciative of everyone else on the panel. Thank you all, because I felt a little bad because all of the faces of those that don't look like me kind of went through my head, and I had to ponder. And what I think I landed on, why I'm searching so hard to give a good answer to that, is I really hope they would. But I have been hurt, and starting as young as a child, in elementary school, and thinking that people had my back, and ended up at the end of the day, they did not. And I was thrown under the bus. Something went missing in the classroom, and I'm the only Black child in the classroom. Well, guess who was accused? And none of my white friends stood up and said, well, Candace was on the playground with us, how could she do that? I was thrown under the bus. And so there was that trauma response. And then I landed here. Would they know? I would hope they would when they know, but would they know to stand up against certain stuff? Because there are two Americas.
Yes.
I come from the America that we have passed down some of this racist stuff. We know what racism is, and we know what the old racism looked like, and we know what the new racism looks like. And things like alligator bait, we know what that is, but do my white friends know what that is? Do they know that Cotton Eye Joe song and what that really means, and who that was for and about? And if it were to come up and I'm not present, right, and they playing Cotton Eye Joe, would my white friend know to say, hold on, no, that's a racist song? Would they even know to do that? And I don't know that they know enough. I really encourage everyone to get to know that they don't teach the history because they don't want you to know it. It ain't us. We know the history. We've been passing, my grandmother told me these things. So we've
Yes.
been passing it on. We know what's racist. We know what happened to our people. They shielded it from y'all. And so
Mhm.
now it's two different Americas. Come on over, learn learn how to stand up in the boardroom for me. Learn how to stand up in the closed room for me. Learn, because they're going to get over on you and you would have never known that you were right there laughing or joking and it was something racial, undertone was racial and you didn't know, right? So
Julie,
Thank you.
can I jump in for just
Sure.
one point I wanted to make when it comes to this? Because as I was sitting here, I just got a text from one of my daughter's friends' moms. And so this topic often comes to me when it comes to my children.
Yes.
Living in a community where we are less than 2%, all of my children's friends don't look like them.
Mhm.
They're invited to birthday parties. They're invited to sleepovers. They're invited to go long weekends with family. And my husband and I have this conversation and debate. Will they be able to protect our child if something
Mhm.
happens?
Right.
You know, one of my daughter's friends, they go camping. And so they have a trailer, stay at trailer parks. A lot of times when you drive past them, what do you see? The big extremist signs all over the place. You know, if someone at that park says something to my Black child who is with this very white family, are they going to know what to do? Or they're going to just brush it off, act like it didn't happen, separate her out, things like that. So we've had to prepare our daughters, right? Because I don't want them to miss out on their life because we're trying to protect them. They do have to go out into the world eventually, but we've had to protect them so that they can speak up for themselves. But this is often a conversation that we have every time they get a birthday invite. Do we know the parents? Is this a parent that is, going to do XYZ? And, sometimes we have the conversations in front of the girls. They know, right? Whether that's right, wrong, or indifferent, but we just feel like we have to prepare them to do that.
I understand that very well. I have adult children now, but raised them in the suburbs and raised them in an area where we were only 4%. So we only had 2% more than you. And I served on council at the time. So everybody knew who I was, and they were invited spaces and I had to do the same thing. You got to call me if XYZ happens, let me know. And really prayed for the best when they were in those spaces where I wasn't available to them. I wasn't right there in the room or right around the corner or whatever it happened to be. I have I think a smattering of all of your responses. It is dependent upon the situation, like Ray said, I think. But I also wholeheartedly agree with what Candace said, that we do have this two different Americas where we have things that we know what the meanings are and we know where some of that stuff came from. And because that has been shielded, somebody could be not even knowing what they're saying or doing. And that can always be a thing. That can just really always be a thing. So I think that we have kind of talked about, best ways to be supportive of us. Someone asked how they could be a better person and more conscientious. And I think we've kind of really almost covered that too. I want to flip the script a little bit, and all of you have pretty much touched on this a bit. How do you show up as an ally? How do you show up as a co-conspirator, whichever terminology that you want to use? Because we are in situations and in spaces where, we have the opportunity to show up for other marginalized groups. What do you do in those instances? Because we all have times when we're in a room, that's familiar and comfortable to us, but that doesn't mean that Uncle Joe isn't going to pop off about something that that Uncle Joes tend to do. And I don't, no disparagement on anybody named Joe, just you all know what I'm talking about. So we will start with Candace, we'll start with you on this one.
I try to be the best person in general to everyone, and especially those in which I have, whether you want to call it an ally, an accomplice, a co-conspirator, those that I have aligned with and have vowed that I'm going to understand their world, and I may not be a part of the group, but I'm going to take the brunt of whatever it is they're going through as my own. And the thing that pops up for me first is the trans community. Like, just being honest, there's not many communities I don't already that I'm not a part of. So, but that's oppressed. I'm part of pretty much all of them, except for that one. And so I try to make it a point that I get just as pissed off about the things that it's hurting, not just them, it's hurting me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting just as pissed off. It's not, I know I'm not part of the group, but I'm gonna be angry as if you would never know, because I'm gonna be angry about it. And I'm gonna be vocal about my anger. One of the reasons I made sure I changed my name, my little pronouns are there, because that's one of the small ways that I make sure that everybody knows I am safe and I am, an ally to this community. And it might make somebody mad, and that's just fine, because I'm ready to have that conversation if it does, that sort of thing. Am I perfect? No, but I look and want opportunities to be better, and any opportunity I'm given, I fall short. There's been times where I've stayed silent when I shouldn't have. And maybe saw a Facebook post or something and scrolled by it because I just didn't have time today, that type of thing, or I didn't have the spoons, I didn't have the capacity. And then later on thought about it and said, I really should have opened my mouth. I'm not perfect, but at the same time, I just strive to do my best.
Adrian?
Yeah, I try to be the ally that I want people to be to me. So whether it's coming in the room and looking around and if I'm a part of a conversation and I see somebody's voice who is not being heard, someone who is not being acknowledged, someone who's being targeted, right? I live in a school district right now where they are creating policies that are targeting groups of students, right? And so how can I speak up for them? Not speak for them, but speak up. Let people know that what is happening is wrong, and it won't happen here. It won't happen in my presence. I'm not okay with it, right? Even if that's all I say, right? It's something to be vocal to allow that person to know that they are supported, right? That somebody else cares about their feelings, right? You were talking about canvassing and, it being, school board going on right now, and none of the candidates, or some of the candidates, will not even talk about what they call the hot button topics, right? But that's DEI, right? It's bathroom policies, it's book banning, it's whitewash curriculum. They won't talk about those things, but do you know how that makes the population of students who are impacted by those things feel? That the people that are vying for those leadership seats won't talk about the things that are negatively impacting them. So I try to be that voice. I try to be that voice and talk about them, and to put something out there, a stance, to say that those things, we shouldn't be doing those things, why they're not right, and things like that. So I'm really passionate about being an ally, knowing what it is to be in a marginalized group, right? And know that you seek allyship. I try my hardest to be it for others, right? In any situation that I see. It could be, learning differently. It could be physical abilities. It could be anything, but I try to be as much of an ally as I can in any situation that I can. And I've sort of gotten through the fear. People are always saying, you're always speaking up about stuff. I've sort of gotten through that fear a little bit, right? So if I'm able to use my voice, I will do that.
Tara?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything been said so far. I would say, and I think we talked about this on what we need, right? So I start from a place of authenticity with someone so that they can feel comfortable, that I am safe. I know how it felt back when I'm canvassing and I saw that Black Lives Matter flag. I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to that house." Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, I felt good. Like, okay, phew. I didn't know what was going to be behind that door, but I know this one's going to be okay. I got this one.
Yeah.
So I try to be that safe place for other people so that they know that they can come to me with that. Whether it's acknowledging certain months, Hispanic Heritage Month, whether it's acknowledging Rosh Hashanah, like anything like that. It's knowing I'm aware that this is going on. I'm still learning. I'm still learning. I think that's key. And I think it is key to understand the same way I could be sitting in a place and something else is said, and I'm just like, oh, no idea what's going on, and oblivious because I haven't taken the time to learn. And I have to acknowledge where that blind spot is for me and say, okay, I need to do a little bit more research here so I can feel like I'm in the know on some things, so I don't find myself in a place where I'm just, nodding along. And then all of a sudden I'm blindsided, like, you didn't realize that was, whatever it is, whatever that is. So I think I start, like Adrienne said, I really start with how I would expect people to be a co-conspirator, accomplice for myself. And then I really try to find out what they need. So what does that look like for you? What can I do for you? And I think through that relationship, you start to learn, you start to feel how you can show up for someone, and then how you can back away, how you can just listen, how you can just be there. And you start to learn that's different for everyone. There's not one way to show up. So I think that's very individual. And it's a matter of really taking that time and carving out space. I believe ultimately that's what it is, because, we're all busy. And then when something happens, it's easy to just, we're moving on. We still have life. Like, let's keep it moving. But when you take that time and really carve out that space to say, okay, let's pause here. I'm not fully aware, but I know that this is not okay. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I know that there's some hate spewing here, and I don't want to be part of that conversation. And I saw that with the school board. We did have a candidate that was running. She had already said some things that I felt were against my family about posting some things about reparation in a tweet. Just, yeah. So I came at her about that, but then she kind of skirted off that and into LGBTQ world, where it was like the medications and the kids, and I'm Catholic and and I said, whoa, I'm gonna stop you right there. I don't have the medical history on this, but I know what you're saying is not educated. What you're saying is not based in fact. I know you haven't done the research. I know you haven't talked to families, trans families. I know you don't have trans kids. I have a person for you. And I went in my phone and I said, this person's actually a doctor. And I need you to link up with her, especially because you're a school board candidate. You would want to know this information, correct? So take the time, link up with her. Of course, she did not. Link up with her before you start speaking on things that you're not well versed in. So please don't do that around me. I can't combat you with facts, but I can give you someone who can give you the facts so that you can speak intelligently going forward.
It's amazing. Right? We are, I don't know if you had anything to add, but we are
Well, no,
right
I
at
feel like
8:30.
y'all shared some really deep stuff. I know we're almost at time, and I would just say that regardless of the marginalized identities I hold, I do my best to name I'm not interested in doing the oppression Olympics. And that diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, and justice is not just for white folks to learn, it's for all of us to learn. And we're all on a journey to learn those things. And so just because I'm Black and I'm a woman and I got a random DEI certification, I don't know all the things. I am really working hard to put myself in uncomfortable spaces and places to stand up for trans folks, to stand up for disabled folks, to stand up for unhoused or houseless folks. And so I have to put myself in situations to make myself uncomfortable so I can grow. And so I know that we're all committed to that. And so for me, the only thing I would add is that I know that we're all on our journey towards growth, and that's what I come to the table with as an ally. Is I don't know all the things. I know a little something about a few things. I'll share them with you, and I want to learn from you. And I really feel like, to Adrian's point, like I feel like my superpower is I don't care if you're the CEO or on the custodial staff. I know how to connect with you in some way, and so regardless of where people are in life, I feel like I do my best to make sure I can make a connection, and then not only make that connection and build a relationship, but also find a way to underscore or amplify what you're doing, whether that's in my personal or professional life. And so that's all I got to add, Julie.
Well, the other thing that I would add about that is, in addition to the fact that folks know that I will defend them if I need to do so, I also try to be a space of peace for folks. I work a little bit really hard on that because a lot of people do not have that. And so, I just want people to know that I'm a safe space to come. Kick off your shoes, we'll sit back, have a beverage, and chat. So,
And she's not lying.
my best friend.
She's not lying at all.
Julie, do you have anything that we need to answer before we get off here? I know we're a couple minutes over time.
There was one question. It was just examples of times that someone has been an accomplice, ally, co-conspirator for you. I need Tara, shared that already.
Mhm.
Meredith just, I'm sorry, that was a good way to end with Meredith in the background there. But if anyone does want to jump in on that, that was the one question in the chat.
I think one of the things I would put out there about being an ally, that a failed attempt really has an impact, right?
Yes.
And I'm not saying that attempt where you sort of stepped out to do something and maybe you were learning and trying to grow and maybe you said something wrong, but a failed attempt in that, like the conversation I shared, right? Sitting down with someone who, and this was a situation where my daughters were experiencing things in their school because of the color of their skin. And so I went to our all-white PTO and said, hey, what do we do around diversity, equity, and inclusion? And was trying to start a committee, right, as an arm of the PTO. And this person that claimed to be an ally was so stuck on their position as being the head of the PTO and that wasn't their idea, that they wanted to sort of sideline it. So the comment of, I don't want to talk about this all the time, like that hurt. It still hurts. And it happened 6 years ago, right? So a failed attempt at being an ally really is impactful. And so when you say that this is what you want to do and this is what you want to be, you really have to be committed to the journey. And you have to be willing to also say when you've made a mistake, right? Or when you're learning or when you don't know. Because when you don't do that, it really does negative, and sometimes it's hard to come back from it.
And when you do admit that you made a mistake, just stand in it. Don't cry and expect us to comfort you.
Yeah.
So on that note, I do want to thank you ladies for being here with me tonight, and Meredith too. And and ladies who are here, you know, to just sit and listen to the panel. You know, thank you also for coming and being willing to listen to some, you know, hard things. You know, we shared some things tonight that were, you know, difficult for us, and I'm sure that were difficult for you all to hear. But I do really appreciate everybody who is here tonight.